Hello and welcome back to No Longer Legally Detained, the podcast about life after the psych ward. How do you navigate being an adult when you never expected to be one? Hello and welcome back. And it's been a bit of time. We are currently experiencing like a massive heat wave in London again, and it's very warm. And I've had to turn my fan off to record this, so God knows how long I'm going to survive. But I got this new top for those who are watching. It says "Grow Up" on it, and it's really cute and it's pink to go with my pink skirt I'm wearing. So yeah, it's a very pink day. And welcome to No Longer Legally Detained, which is my podcast, which is a follow-on from the blog I started when I was in hospital called Legally Detained. And this is where we talk about what happens after survival, after diagnosis, and after the system spits you out and then just says good luck. And this is for anyone who feels too weird, too much, too loud, too intense, too fragile, too emotional, and somehow also not enough all at the same time. And today's episode is something that's been really weighing heavily on my heart, weighing heavily on my chest, and something that I feel really like compelled to talk about. And I wanted to do an episode where I do my speech that I did at the Autism and ADHD show, but I just felt really compelled to do this episode. And this episode is going to be titled Not Too Much, Not Too Little, Just Too Real for Them. And I've got some notes, which is always a good start. I didn't want to script the whole thing because I think like it can then sound like really like not authentic, which is obviously what I want. But also, if I don't script at all, then we end up like just going off on like 5 million tangents. So sit back, relax, get a cup of tea, get a biscuit. I tend to like to listen to podcasts while I'm doing my makeup in the morning and like getting ready. I find like that's my favorite time to listen to a podcast. And I'm going to start with a little bit of kind of spoken word. This is what I wrote last night and it was on my Instagram, and I wanted to start the episode with it, and it's in my bullet journal. Again, for those who are watching, I've got one of the notebook therapy bullet journals, and it's very pink and very cute. But yeah, this is what kind of inspired this episode. You are not missing out when you walk away from people and places who treat you like a backup plan. You are not a failure because someone or somewhere fails to see what you could bring if only they were to remove the binary glasses that they are wearing. You are not going crazy when you still don't feel enough despite the positive words due to the opposite actions. To those who are always doubted, passed over and boxed in, not because you lack brilliance, but because they lack vision. They marvel at your insecurity, yet never ask who planted it. They tell you to believe in yourself while shutting every door before you can knock. Let this be clear. Their blindness to your power is not your burden to carry. Their ignorance is not your reflection. You are not too much. You are not too little. You are exactly what they fear. Unapologetically capable, relentlessly rising. Your light intimidates those who have grown comfortable in the dark. So shine anyway. And that was a bit of spoken kind of words, that's like quotes I wrote last night. And I think it comes from a really big truth that I've been recently kind of questioning, I think, as a trauma survivor. And as someone who's grown up undiagnosed neurodivergent, I've spent my whole life waiting to be accepted, waiting to finally find the people who want me for me. And for me, I've viewed belonging and viewed like my self-worth based on when somewhere eventually lets me in and wants me for me. And I've started to question whether that really is. And maybe it is, I don't know. Like, it's really tricky, but I don't think actually that I need to be accepted by other people to then be enough as I am. Like, if they don't want me or can't see my value as the person I am, and I'm being, obviously a good person and not like doing anything wrong, like no crimes being committed, but like if you are doing and being your authentic self and you're not hurting anybody else and people still don't want you, that is not your burden to carry. I've been there, and being told that you're incredible, talented and powerful while always being kept at arm's length, being talked about as a voice for change, but never actually being truly handed the mic, being told you're included, but constantly being asked to shrink to fit into the space. That is not inclusion. That is performance. And I'm not performing anymore unless it's on the stage. If I ever get let onto the stage, which is part of the problem. I think that this narrative that we have of inclusion is so warped. And I speak for this not just from my own experiences, my own perspectives, but from watching on other people's experiences and seeing the truly devastating effects of people who, due to so many different reasons, and it's different circumstances for everyone, almost never get the opportunity to even, not even fulfill their potential, but even begin the journey of their potential, because they are so misunderstood by a system which, even in the best of cases, can be so binary and so narrow-minded. And, again, first of all, absolutely no defamation. This isn't aimed anywhere specifically, but it's just something that the more I think about and the more I grow in my own journey, and the more that I kind of really question my own thoughts and my own opinions and values, and thinking why do I feel certain ways, and why do certain things affect me the way that they do. And it's in this thinking that I start to be able to question my own beliefs and my own understanding of what I am wanting, and what behaviors I maybe present, what causes them and why they are there. And I think the biggest thing to always say is that it's not about blame. It's not about people being in the right or people being in the wrong. While we are always trying to point fingers, and while we are always trying to have this, you're doing it right and you're doing it wrong, we actually do the opposite of what we're trying to achieve. While there is a right and a wrong, there will never be true inclusion, because in the respect of this, obviously crimes, we're just putting crimes to the side, no crime. But I think that thing of while we still view one way as the good way, even if people allow you to get to that way in a different way, we will never truly experience the depth and the breadth and the excitement and the amazing and the wonder of what human beings can achieve. And I think that I look at, some of the places that are even really close to me and who champion inclusion, and you think that, yes, even though there is so much amazing inclusion happening in this world, and this is not just, I know how lucky we are in the UK, obviously there's still so much that, needs to happen, but we are so lucky. But still, we are only reaching 5% of the light that we could be reaching, because there is still, even in the most inclusive spaces, there is still this binary narrative of what success looks like. And I think that is what makes me so frustrated, so cross, and also so sad. But also, I do get it. I really get it. And it's at the moment, I don't think even I'm able to articulate what I really feel. And I think that unless we're able to articulate it, obviously no one's going to be able to understand it. But I do think that it's something that we really do need to start questioning, really openly and honestly. And it's not about pointing fingers. It is not about having people being better or worse. I think it's about honest and open conversations. And I think that honesty really is the biggest gift that we do have, because in this world we do spend a lot of time saying one thing and meaning another. And I think that obviously there's always times where sometimes a little white light doesn't do any harm, but as someone with complex PTSD and as a multiple trauma survivor, my biggest trigger is lying. I hate capital HATE being lied to. And when I say being lied to, I mean any form of dishonesty. And it's something that goes right through me. And I really cannot on any level cope with any level of dishonesty. And even when it's not meant in a bad way, and even when it's done for your best interest and all of that, for me personally, that is the worst thing that anybody could ever do, is to lie to me or to pretend or to withhold the truth, because I am someone who is incredibly hypervigilant. I also have the most phenomenal pattern recognition skills due to being neurodivergent and also, severe trauma. And so I will already have gone about 8 layers deep into the onion before you've even realized that there's an onion in the room. And therefore you can't lie to me, because I will find out. And that sounds really dramatic, but it is the truth. As soon as there's any glimpse that you've maybe not told me the truth within what obviously I appreciate that things change, and that's okay, and I can deal with that. And that's the thing, what people I can cope with the fact that life changes. I very much have lived a life that I know unexpected things happen. I know just even not unexpected things. I know life is completely chaotic and mental, but with the information that you have in that moment, if you then like / be dishonest with that is my nemesis. That's the one thing that really breaks any form of trust I could ever have formed with someone. And I think that like a lot of that comes with this idea of like being too much and too little and not enough, of like, you know, kind of, it links a lot with the performing industry, but I think for me it's been in general, but specifically like kind of put it into context of something that's real, because that's sometimes like helpful to like have a real like thing to hold on to. When it comes to performing, I have always doubted my ability to perform, which I think, like, you know, is quite a universal experience. Obviously, when you add in complex trauma, you add in neurodivergence, you add in, you know, a tricky life, having that any self-confidence and self-worth is non-existent anyway. But my big like thing with this is that, you know, I will still now really don't think I'm any good, and really doubt completely within every inch of my body and my being, like truly, like not just like fishing for compliments, like genuinely. And when people go, but we told you you're good, and I appreciate the nuance, but when actions do the opposite, it's really, really hard to believe people. And I think that this is something that I have, in my kind of time of like really reflecting on why I still don't feel good enough despite the fact that people tell me that I am, is because, well, obviously, first of all, like we always hear the negative, even in the sea of positives, but kind of stripping all of that back, I really struggle to believe the words that people say when their actions do the opposite. And that is something that I think, especially when it comes to young people and children who have experienced severe trauma, and obviously adults as well, you know, we have to understand that when someone goes through severe trauma, their nervous system has an injury. You know, complex PTSD is an injury, you know, to your nervous system, and therefore your sense of stability and sense of self is rocked. And obviously, you know, I'm no doctor or psychiatrist, so I'm not gonna like try and explain that right now, but like that is like the core thing. And so that therefore you can tell somebody, oh, you're great, but if your actions even remotely infer the opposite, that person is going to latch onto that. And I think that that's kind of where I stand at the moment in a lot of my life. And it's what I've realized, you know, kind of like it's a twofold, and I'm going to explain in a minute like what I'm going to be doing about that. But first of all, like just kind of looking at the thing of like, the reason I don't feel good enough is obviously systemically from all of the problems that have happened, but in this current moment is because despite the fact that people say things, their actions show the opposite. And I think that that's something that's really nuanced and something that's really hard to kind of understand. And it's not about being ungrateful, and it's not about, you know, wanting everything your own way. It's like, that's not what we're talking about here. It's about looking at like how taking yourself out of the situation and looking at it from that person's perspective. You know, obviously you can never understand from someone else's perspective because you've never lived their life, you've never had all the experiences that they've had, which shapes the way that they then perceive the world. But like, that is something that I'm really like learning to do in my own work, of like looking and going, right, so someone is reacting in this way, even though I've said to them and other people have said to them that they're great. Why? Because I know myself, I don't believe it. And it was through that kind of then looking at other people and going, well, actually, let's have a look at like what is that person seeing? And I think that when you've experienced a lot of emotional abuse and manipulation and gaslighting specifically, you learn that words mean nothing. They mean absolutely nothing when an action does the opposite. And I think that like that's obviously like words hurt, words really hurt, and the words do matter and they mean a lot, and they can be so damaging in that respect. And as someone who's experienced a hell of a lot of emotional abuse, I very much understand that. But in this respect of like when it comes to positives, I think, you know, I do think this probably counts for all people, but specifically and especially for those who've experienced severe, you know, mental abuse, you can say things until you're blue in the face, unless that person is able to have repeated factual evidence with your actions, they are not going to be able to believe you. And the thing is like, is that your job? Not necessarily. It depends what situation you're in, but it is something like, it's not necessarily your job to, you know, so if you're a nice person, you might want to like support and try to reassure someone with your actions. But obviously, you know, but to be able to keep telling someone and then almost getting annoyed with them when they don't believe you and not understanding how they cannot believe you, maybe take a moment to have a look and this is like, no, again, I'm just putting this into the space, putting it into the air, but like take a moment and look and think, hang on a second, right? I'm saying these things and I have that person's best interest at heart. And like, this is who I'm really speaking to in these situations of like, this isn't for people who don't care, because first of all, they wouldn't be listening to this. But second of all, they wouldn't even realize that like they're the problem. But like, it is for people who, you think that you're doing the right thing. And I think that that's like so commendable, and it's also like no defamation that you may not be getting it right, because we all get things wrong all of the time. And like when it comes to trauma, like for me, I'll go in like a little side note. Up until this year, when people asked why I struggled, I said it was because I was autistic. That was the reason. I'm neurodivergent. I'm neurodivergent. I'm neurodivergent. That's why I struggle. And although while that absolutely does hold true, for me, the reason behind some of the bigger struggles that I've been having were not really to do with that. They were all to do with trauma. And that's not that because I was trying to deal with it in a neurodivergent lens and it wasn't working. That doesn't mean I was wrong. It just means I didn't know. I didn't understand. I didn't know what trauma was. I didn't understand how trauma affected people. I didn't understand how trauma affected me. I didn't even realize I had trauma, really. And so I think that it is that thing of like, we have to open our minds. And like, that is something that I'm so learning of, like, it's okay to be wrong and it's okay to not know. But what it's not okay is to refuse to learn. And like all the time, I am constantly learning and wanting to improve and get better and understand. And like just at the Autism and ADHD show, I went and listened to Maya's talk all about gender nonconformity and neurodivergence, and truly was the most fascinating thing. And like, having, a sister who's kind of going through that kind of thing, and like having friends, and like, I'll be totally honest, I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. And it wasn't necessarily from like an ignorant, well, it was kind of ignorant because I hadn't learned about it yet, but like it was just, I didn't know. And now I had that talk and it like really opened my brain and been like, oh my goodness, this is so like, this really being able to like understand something. And like, I'll be totally honest, like I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I couldn't, put myself, because I've never been there. I've not been in that position. I've never questioned my gender. I've never felt like I'm in the wrong body. So therefore, how was I ever going to be able to understand something unless I listen and learn from those who do? And I think that like, that's where, these kind of conversations come from. It's not about, me being better than you, because that's not the case. I've got many flaws, but I think the more we're willing to get away from this whole like life's a competition, it's not. It's a series of moments, memories, and mistakes. In that, we need to listen and learn from different people. And for some people, they might listen to this and really relate. For other people, you might listen to this and go, that's not my experience. And that is okay. My experience and your experience can stand side by side, both being equally as true and being completely the opposite. And I think that like why I wanted to talk about this is because if this makes somebody like in their brain go, oh, like that's interesting, that's a thought, I'm gonna apply that maybe to myself like in my own way, or I'm gonna apply that to someone I'm working with in their own way, then, and it makes, even just makes someone think, then it's worth all of my time and effort and energy. So yeah, I've completely forgotten where I got to, because obviously I went on that complete tangent about being right or wrong. But I think, where was I? No idea. I'm just gonna carry on and hopefully like it comes back in full circle, like ADHD vibes. But yeah, I think that thing of like looking at why that person is feeling the way that they're feeling. And I think that like what we've got to look at is that a lot of the time we are putting our own perceptions and thoughts and experiences, which is all we have to put onto somebody else. And that can, while being meant in the best and the most loving and kind way, actually be the opposite. And for me, I think that is such a like an integral part of what I have realized in my own search for belonging, my own search for like my place, is that I have been still searching for somewhere that I fit into, that my shape is comfortable to go in. And there is no Hannah size shape anywhere, because there is no anyone size shape. We are all individuals. We are all different. We are all different shapes. And there will be no organization, no institution, no place that has a Hannah size shape. I will always be too big, too small, the wrong shape, too much of a misfit to fit into any of those places. The same goes for everybody else. And I think that it's almost like for some of us, we have like this like lens, like we're hyper aware of our shape and we realize that we don't fit perfectly. Whereas other people, they don't fit perfectly, but they maybe are not quite as aware that they don't fit so perfectly. But I think for me, because I've been constantly told I don't fit, I'm so hyper aware of my shape that even in places that I could kind of semi like hang out in, I'm so aware of my difference and of my inability to fit the shape. And I think that, when we talk about complexity, it's quite a tricky one, but I do think that, like, because of my intersectionalities that bring in such a different, they are what make me me, and they are the reason I am the person I am, for good and for bad. But it does, I think, accentuate my shape and my inability to fit in. And I think that, like, I have been searching for the place that, while I don't, I obviously went through a stage where I thought I had to change my shape to fit into what was there. I've come through that journey and now, know that I don't need to change, but I've been looking for a place that, fits my shape. And then even after that, like, probably just finding a place that where my shape could fit, even, if it's not a perfect fit. But I think what I'm coming to understand is that actually true inclusion is not from a place that accepts all shapes. It's not a place that where they accept me for my shape. True inclusion is a place that has no shape to be put into. It's a place where it engulfs all shapes and there is no need to fit in a certain way, even within a different kind of shape. And I think that that is what I've realized, is that I am still, the reason I don't kind of fit is because even places that are really inclusive, they still have this idea of, to achieve certain things, you have to do things a certain way. And that is, I stand by the fact that even in the most inclusive places, that is the truth. Even in some of the most inclusive places, the opportunities, what people view as like the success, the ones who are succeeding, who get, whether if it's in the arts, the main parts, who get the opportunities to do things, you have to go through the process to get to that. And even in places that do pride themselves, and we don't all have to be the same, look at the way that your people who are at that top, that success at that moment, they have all, even if they've done it in a different way, they still have to have gone through the motions to get to that point. And while I do believe, hard work should be rewarded, I think we are still confusing hard work with conformity. And I think that, like, I have just been opened my eyes very recently to the fact that while even in some of the most inclusive places, because I refuse to break myself in order to be palatable for them, even though I'm doing nothing wrong, and even though I am potentially talented and capable enough, if I can't go through the exact same motions that they expect, even though they're saying that they don't expect it, but they do expect it, you will not succeed in that place. And I think that that is wrong. I do, like, I'll stand here, and again, no defamation, but I do think that, like, if we are really going to create true inclusion, if we're really going to break the binary and, system that we have created, we need to start being radically progressive. We need to start to take stock and actually think and take a moment and go, okay, words mean nothing if we are unwilling to truly reflect that, what we're saying, with our actions, and be able to stand up and go, this is what we believe and this is what we embody. And yes, or some people might not like how we're doing this, because in a capitalist, conformative, neuroconformate society, being truly inclusive is not going to be the in thing. It's not going to be the thing that makes, people are going to feel uncomfortable, because the truth is that we don't live in a society where people are treated equally. We don't live in an equitable society where people who have less are given more to get to the equal point. We don't live in that kind of society. As much as, we can try and pretend that we do, we don't. And until we are willing to be honest and go, you know what, I am not that, And that is okay. No one's going to be perfect. No organization is going to be perfect. No person's going to be perfect. I'm so far from being a truly inclusive practitioner. I am, because nobody is, because actually true inclusion is not ever a destination, but it's forever going to be a journey. It's going to be something that can hear the water boiler. It's never going to be something that you achieve, because if you achieve it, you've definitely not achieved it. Like, you've probably done the opposite. And I think that is the thing of, like, while people are unwilling to have uncomfortable conversations, or unwilling to truly listen, and not and it takes time. I think that's a really big thing, that true inclusion takes a hell of a lot of time and effort. Really takes a lot of time and effort. It takes you being willing to sit in feelings that make you uncomfortable, in perspectives of the world that you don't believe in, that you don't agree with, that make you question everything that you've ever done in your life. And like, that is where I've been at, recently. Like, I've been sat there and I've been thinking, and I've been like, this goes against what I've always been taught, what I even believed. And that doesn't make me a bad person, because maybe in the past I believed different things. I believed what I had with the knowledge and information I had at the time, and that is all anyone can ever do. And then when you have more information and have more experiences, that is when you have the opportunity to expand your mind, and that is all you can ever do. You can't ever have all the information. You can't ever know everything. Like, that's not how it works. And we will always make mistakes. We will always do the wrong thing. We will always exclude someone accidentally, on purpose. We will do all of those things. And it's not about, obviously, we should all try our best not to. But if we do, it's actually not about that situation. It's about how you then handle that with the newfound information that you have. And I think that, like, as someone who has constantly been told I'm too much or not enough, and then I go into places with the lowest self-esteem known to humankind, and they tell me that I don't know why you don't think you're any good, and yet opportunities are closed before I even have the chance to knock on that door, because I will never be able to do things in the way that they have to be done to get to the end result. And what people don't understand when it comes to being radically progressive is that this doesn't mean that don't have to work hard. I work bloody hard. It doesn't mean that the end product doesn't have to be of high quality, even the same quality. It doesn't mean that, especially when there are other people involved, that the thing shouldn't be, like, there should be unfair advantages. But this isn't about an unfair advantage. The really most disproportionately disadvantaged people in our society are not just, a mile behind the start line. They're not even on the same continent as the start line. The start line is so far away that there is no amount of work or of equitable practice that can ever get them even remotely near that start line. So why are we still expecting them to get to that same start line? Why can't we move the start line? Why can't we have another start line? And like, that for me just feels like obvious, but also like, well, what does that mean in practice? So if we move the start line, we have another start line. That doesn't mean we take away that other start line, the original start line, because for some people that is their start line. And just because other people are going to have a different start line in a different location on a different continent doesn't mean that other people, their start line can't be the original start line. And that, start line's wrong. There's nothing to say that start line is wrong. There just needs to be different start lines. And for some people, maybe there's no start line. For some people, that start line may look in like all different shapes and sizes. But while we are expecting people to conform enough to get to the start line to then be able to go on the same trajectory as other people, certain people will never, ever get the chance to have any opportunities, never, ever have the chance to even begin to see their potential and to see that they are a worthy human being. And I think that that's where it comes from, that idea that sometimes we have to move the start line to the person, because it's then that unlocks the key for them to go onto their trajectory. And while we're waiting, and even though we're supporting them to get to the original start line, it will never happen for certain people, because it's too big a feat. And I think that that's, for me, when I look at like my situation in certain places, that as much as I work so hard and that people are trying, with the knowledge that they have to help me get to the start line, I will never get to that start line. It will take so long and so much pain and so much, it's just impossible. It's impossible for me to get to that start line. But if people are willing to be so radically progressive that they move that start line and they go, you know what? Despite what anybody else might say, we believe in true inclusion. And therefore, we believe that you might have to miss out a few steps that other people have to do. And that's not about being lazy. It's not about having a head start. And while we still view inclusion as that, we will never, ever achieve belonging for the most vulnerable in our society. Because for some young people, the fact that they are still alive, they have done more work to be still alive than many, many, many people combined will do in their whole lifetime. And it's not about not being enough. I can't tell you how much, if you are listening to this and you are one of the people, you are so enough. You are so enough that it is unbelievable. And you can achieve anything that you want to achieve. In fact, you can achieve more than you will ever be able to believe you can achieve. But we need to start moving the start line for these people. We need to stop believing that we need to carry them to the start line and allow the start line to come to them. Because while we're carrying someone to somewhere, we're completely negating their lived experience. We're negating their, ability to, once they get to the start line, to be able to actually go on forward in that trajectory. Life takes stepping stones. We need to experience all of these things. And to be able to experience something, we have to go through it. But if we move the start line, we can go through it in a way that allows us to still achieve. And I think that is my big message to anyone listening to this today. If you work with young people, if you work with specifically with young people who've experienced trauma, who are working and you're looking, you're thinking, we're doing all of these things, yet they're not really making any progress. I want you to really take a moment and question and go, are we trying to carry them to the start line? Or could we maybe bring the start line to them? And I'm not sure whether that analogy even makes any sense, but I just feel so passionately about the fact that, I look at the times when people kind of, even just at uni recently, like when I join in a class, that is viewed as success. The fact that I've joined in, not taking into account on any respect whether that is helpful, has moved me forward. I've done that to the detriment of myself, whether I've masked, whether I've made myself really poorly, whether I've any of those things, because joining in is the success. But why is that the success? Because that is a very binary way of looking at things. And I think that is where we really need to stop and start to think about what really is the thing. What is this inclusion that we're talking about? What is this belonging? What is this really representing all people? It's not about getting all of the people to the start line, even if that's done in an equitable way. It's about having different start lines. It's about moving the start line to the person. It's about being the champion of that person with their different start line and being unapologetic in your pursuit for that to be a thing. And there will be people that don't understand and who go, that's not fair. But I look now, and I've had those experiences where you look and you think, wait, why have they had that? That's not fair. But I really want people to take a moment, because I think that what I've learned is that you never know somebody's story. You never know what somebody has been through. And if they need their start line moved for them, it's not that it's not fair for you. It's not fair for them that they've had to experience all of those things. That means that they had no chance of getting to this stupid binary start line that we all need to get to anyway. And I think that while it would be amazing to just get rid of all of the start lines, that isn't the reality. And I think that is another thing that really holds us back in this whole true inclusion thing of saying that we don't have a start line, that we're all just doing our own thing, when success is still viewed in a certain way. And I think that that is another thing of like how you can tell someone that everyone is going on their own journey. Everyone's going on their own journey, you know, you're on your own journey. Yet when you herald a certain thing as success, when you herald a certain kind of opportunity or certain group as that is success, even if you're not saying that that is success, that everybody has different success, your actions show people, because people aren't stupid, that that is the pinnacle. That, you know, when you achieve that, even if the organization aren't saying that that is the top, it is, because we still live, even in the most currently radically progressive places, we still have a hierarchy. We still have a system where, well, if it's in performing arts, it might be being a lead character, but might be having multiple opportunities to do things, while, you know, in other places it might be being in a leadership role, it might be, you know, earning lots of money. While you can say that those things don't matter, they only don't matter to people who are able to achieve them. Very often, people who are not able to achieve those things are not the ones saying that they don't matter. And I think that it's those things, the amount of times I see people who stand there and tell me that, oh, you're on your own journey, it doesn't matter. It only doesn't matter to you because you have already achieved what you believe to be success. And the fact that I may not be able to do that, you cannot fathom or understand how, that as much as I can absolutely, and I do fully in my heart believe in true inclusion and true difference, while we are still in all systems focusing on this idea of binary success, even if it's unspoken, even if the words say one thing but the actions say something else, we will never be able to achieve it. And I think that we really have to start looking at how our actions look. And, you know, it is that thing of like, everything does matter. And like, everything does matter, yet it all doesn't matter. But when we are in places, when we're working with very vulnerable young people, or any people really, you've got to think about what you're doing. You can't just go around willy-nilly just like being. And like, it's so hard to look at yourself and to really reflect on yourself as a person. And the past 5 years, I've spent 5 years reflecting and opening up and really looking so deep inside myself. I am nowhere near done in my journey of reflecting on who I am as a person. That's something that you never achieve. It is so ridiculously hard, but I do think that that is kind of the, you know, one positive that I do have is that because of everything that I've been through and because of how low my self-esteem was, I was able to find it probably a little bit easier into really like going through my personality and who I am and really just reflecting and looking and going, what is what? And I just really want to say to anybody who's listening to this, you know, still doesn't feel enough, despite the fact that people around them are telling them that they are. You know, I know that I have definitely felt like I'm going crazy and like that I really am like such a problem, because why don't I feel it? Maybe it's because their actions don't match their words. And unfortunately, we can't necessarily change their actions. We can't. We definitely can't. It's impossible. You can't change someone else's actions. You can't change the fact that they may say one thing, their actions may say something else, even though they don't mean that. But what I have learned is that then we have to take back the power ourselves, and we have to realize that I am not looking to belong anywhere. I am who I am. I am a person. I am Hannah, and I am lots of things. I am lots of great things. I am lots of not so great things. But I am someone who is unlike anybody else, like everybody is. And I will never be able to find a place that accepts me, because the only place that can accept me is me. And I need to accept me. I need to have my boundaries and my barrier and go, you know what, this is what I believe. These are my core values. This is what I truly believe. And if I do believe that I am a worthy human being and I have things that are great, I will make my own success. I will make my own path. And while we still live in a society where even in the best of places there is binary success, we have to break out of that and we have to kind of create our own path. And like, that is so hard and that is exhausting, but that is why I do what I do, because I don't want other people to have to do it alone. And I think that, you know, when I sit there and listen to people talking about how, you know, the success is never done alone, I think that always comes from someone who has never experienced, or definitely not fully experienced, this kind of what we've been talking about today. But for those of us who are on this journey, while it feels lonely and isolating and that we kind of are by ourselves, we're not, because we've got each other, and we are paving the way to ensure that there are other people who come after us who don't have to pave it alone, who don't have to be the ones questioning their sanity, because it just doesn't make any sense. And I don't want this to sound like a negative and or I'm all alone, because I'm not. But it's such a nuanced thing. It really is such a nuanced thing. And as I kind of look back at my notes, kind of where it's hard, because so many times I've had people even invite me into their space because of my story, but then they quietly ask me to soften the edges, water it down, and make it more palatable. And I think that is what I have realized, is that people I'm just not ready yet for the truth. And I've been praised publicly and then ignored in the rooms that matter. I've been told that I'm brave but never backed when I'm bold, and I felt people marvel at my honesty while terrified of what forces them to confront it. I think that those things are completely exhausting, but they are also clarifying. And this is kind of looking at my notes, kind of how I was going to sum this up, is that as I got older, I have realized that people will say things, they will say that you're amazing, yet the things that make you amazing, they're not quite ready to accept and to promote. And as we get older, I realize that the problem, however, is not me, and that my light does not burn too bright or not enough. They just have not learned yet how to stop squinting, how to stop fighting the difference that comes, that true difference. And that's not just difference from me, but that's difference from every single person. And I really hope that the more we speak about authenticity and being unapologetic, and this doesn't mean being self-centered, it's actually the complete opposite. It's about welcoming people as they come. It's about listening and wanting people as they are. And I think if we all do that, we create a world that is so much more accepting and also so much more brilliant. So if you've ever been passed over, doubted, or boxed in, this episode is for you. And it's not because you lack brilliance, but it is because they lack vision. Their lack of imagination is not your failure, and their comfort zone is not your limit. You're not too much. You're not too little. You're exactly what the world needs and what it fears, because you refuse to play small for anyone. So if this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Please do tag me at NLLD the podcast or at Legally Detained. I love hearing from you. I really do. I really hope that if no one has told you today, your voice does matter. Your difference matters, and just showing up already is so revolutionary. Our existence is an act of radical defiance, and we will change the system and change the world and allow people to be able to really be who they are. And so until next time, keep rising, keep fighting, keep raising your voice, be loud, be imperfect, and be unapologetically you. Bye-bye.